arguments they have around money, a lot of times aren't about money at all, but do my needs actually matter to you? We're still going to have disagreements, but it most certainly helps create an emotional bond that makes it much easier for them to communicate about their problems in a healthy way. When I had my son, I was not doing well. I did not know how to be emotionally supportive at all.
Hey guys, welcome to Simply Complicated. I'm Sadie Such, excited to have you guys here today. Today we're going to be talking with Julie Mennano. She is a couples therapist. She's the author of the bestseller, Secure Love. She's a wife, she's a mom, she's an attachment theory expert, and we're really excited to talk to her today. You may have seen her on Instagram at The Secure Relationship. If you haven't seen her yet, go check her out. She has helpful tips, practical resources, and a link to her book. We'll go ahead and get started and jump into that conversation with her today. I found you personally on Instagram, Secure Relationship, years ago. And when I started seeing your work and the things you were sharing, it was just really, really helpful for me to put words to what I was trying to communicate. Situations where I was like, am I making this up? Am I crazy? So it's just, thank you so much for the work that you do and for sharing it with the world. I know social media can be its own mountain to tackle. And so, yeah, just thank you for putting in the effort to kind of help all of us.
You're very welcome. Thanks for that feedback. That means everything.
Yeah. So I was curious kind of what led you into this field of work and how did you get to where you are right now?
I really kind of knew from a very young age that I had the therapist gene. I just was really drawn to that. But then kind of in college, got messages that this wasn't a really, safe career path, and just, got a lot of mixed messages. So I decided not to pursue it when I originally went to college. And then I ended up becoming a stay-at-home mom. Had 6 kids in 10 years. So it was kind of like squeezed together. And I really was just like very driven to be a very, very good mom. And I just didn't have the skills to do it. I did not grow up in an environment where I had the emotional support skills really necessary to help my kids become, as emotionally healthy as possible. And so that sort of, and being very burnt out and overwhelmed from being at home with them for that long. And it was just a really, really hard experience for me. So that kind of led me to going back to grad school, because I needed something to be doing outside of the house. I was not thriving. And B, I was just very driven to kind of learn humanity so I could be better for them. So I did not want to do couples therapy, had absolutely zero interest in that. But I had to see couples when I was trying to get my license. You have to get so many hours. And so basically I had to see a couple. I had to see a certain number of sessions with couples. So I saw this first couple and I was like, wow, this is incredibly difficult. I mean, you can kind of coast with an individual. And I was like, this is really hard. And something about it was like, I need to get some more training. So I went and got this type of training for the type of work I do. And then I never saw another individual after that. I mean, I just fell in love with couples work. I mean, just absolutely fell in love with it. And I started realizing wow, instead of me bonding with the client as a therapist and an individual, and then sending them home where they're with these people that kind of aren't on the same page with them, and growth wise, I can actually facilitate that between the two of them. And, I'm doing individual therapy with my couples. It's just that I'm doing it together and also using that as a relationship growth. And so that just, I just kind of fell in love with that. And, I realized that I'm just a very relationally driven person. And so all of the skills that I've learned from being a couples therapist have translated into my relationships with my husband and my kids. And so it's just kind of helped me all over the board. And attachment theory is what I first got into. And that, made so much sense to me. And so then I started the Instagram account just to kind of help give people the self-help version, because I realized there's a lot of misinformation that people are putting out that aren't actual couples therapists about this work that wasn't feeling really accurate to me. And so I started trying to put my own stuff out there. And yeah, so I hope that's a good answer. Kind of.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. I love getting to hear that you were like, no, I don't want to be in a couples therapy, and that led that to that's what you do. Yeah.
To me, it felt like just kind of like being a referee of people's, you know, conflicts. And I was like, I do enough of that at home with my kids, but it's really not like that at all.
Was there like a key moment or thing that kind of made you be like, oh, I'm not just a referee? Is there kind of one part that kind of shifted your direction?
Yeah, it was being able to do the individual work that I really love, which is really diving into someone and helping them really, really understand the deepest parts of their experiences and their fears and, you know, all of these deep places, views of self that most people aren't used to being able to access, and
Mm-hmm.
put words to that. But then to be able to use that to bond with their partner about a topic that, you know, 5 minutes ago was a fight, and now we're using
Mm-hmm.
this material to get down to these beautiful places within ourselves, and instead of fighting about this, now we're kind of creating this, like, bond, and then that's gonna help us communicate through this issue in a
Yeah.
healthier way, like that, and I do that with my kids now instead of, you know, refereeing their fights and me deciding who's wrong or right or whatever. I'm actually helping them get down to the deeper places with them and connect with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I have found has diminishes fighting is building up the connection.
That's awesome. That's huge. Yeah, like you said, therapy, it can be individual with the therapist, but that you get to be there and help the couple create that space to connect.
Yeah, there's 2 parts of therapy. One is creating emotional safety. Like, you don't get anywhere with someone if they don't feel emotionally safe with their therapist. I mean, you're not gonna open
Mm-hmm.
up, right? To do that, you have to have all these really beautiful emotional support skills. And then the second piece is really helping people, you know, understand their dynamics and why they do the things they do. It was really bothering me that that emotional support piece wasn't happening in everybody's lives outside of me because
Mm-hmm.
nobody therapists are trained to learn how to do that. But like who else is being trained to create
Mm-hmm.
emotional safety, to validate, to, you know, and so you know, I really love that I can give couples that. So in a weird way, this isn't complete, but in a weird way, I'm helping them become their own therapist to each other.
Yeah.
Without yeah, without the analytical part.
That's awesome. That's I feel like that's really, really helpful. I mean, for myself and in my own relationship, us being able to do that with each other and learning those validation and attunement has been like a game changer.
I mean, I think therapy would go a lot faster for people if they had because some people, they just keep going back to their therapist because that's literally the only place where they're getting emotional support. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if we could get that in people's lives, then they can the therapy process would be shorter. That would mean more
Mm-hmm.
people would have access to therapy. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like mental health wise, that's what we really the direction that we need to be going is getting these pieces of therapy that people are going back to therapy for too long for in their real
Mm-hmm.
lives.
Yeah. That goes into my next question of you mentioned validation. That understanding what validation and attunement was for me was like, oh, this feels so simple, like just these phrases I need to hear and I feel this weight off my shoulders. Could you explain in your own words what validation or attunement is?
Sure. Let me think about that. Sometimes I do a little thing. I'll go ahead and do it.
Okay.
So I mean, honestly, as you know, a professional that interviews a lot of people, I'm actually kind of surprised you already don't know what that means. Like, why is it that you don't know what validation means? Isn't that something you should know?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Are you talking to
Yes,
me?
yes. I'm
Oh,
talking to
yes.
you. Okay,
Yes. I
okay.
know what
So
it is now.
okay,
Yes.
that's a
Yes,
cruel
yes.
little thing that I do to
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
people.
I was like, yeah.
Yeah. Because I wanna highlight something. What happened
Yes.
in your body when I started kinda saying that, like, almost like shaming you for not knowing?
Yeah.
Like, what did you notice? Like, did something tense up? Did you feel taken aback? Did you
Yeah. I was like, wait, no, I do. Wait, what? Yes.
Yes, so
Mhm.
that is you kinda got caught off guard. That's the feeling of invalidation.
Mhm.
That's the feeling of misattunement. Like, we're not with each other, you know?
Mhm.
And then when I now say, "Hey, of course that was stressful for you, and I'm really sorry that I did that to you," you know,
Yeah.
we're all of course you need to ask me about validation because you're teaching to an audience, blah, blah, blah. Like all of a sudden your body goes back into a state of ease. Okay. So
Mhm.
that's what's a lot of times partners are doing what I just did to you over and over and over and over again
Mhm.
through sometimes throughout the day, sometimes throughout the week, and they don't even know that they're doing it. Like they
Mhm.
don't even know about that feeling in their body. They don't even they have an idea this doesn't feel good and they protest back and forth to each other, but they're not being given the words to just stay with someone emotionally, don't move away from them. Don't say things like how could you not know that already, and so
Yeah. That's a great example. Thanks for doing that. I was like, whoa, okay, yes, but that's
because
perfect.
I do a lot of body work. I mean, if we're
Hmm.
not working in the body, everything's just conceptual, right?
Yeah.
And so I really do want people to start, you know, have getting used to more feeling these things on a bodily level
Hmm.
because it is much, much easier to resonate with concepts when they're alive inside, when you're recognizing how they're alive in your body.
Hmm. And so that's just kind of a first step to that is like pausing and noticing. Like for myself, I could have paused and noticed, oh yeah, I'm feeling really tense and kind
Yes.
of
Yes.
tense and
Or
noticing
like
that.
right now, I have like a pressure in my, you know, my stomach area. I feel like a ton of tension. And if I'm going to really pay attention to that, it's because I'm worried that I hurt you
Mm,
by
yeah.
making you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like I'm worried, like, was that not, was that mean? Was that, and so that's me recognizing in my bodily experience that,
Yeah. Well, I'm good. Thank you for acknowledging that. I do think that that was initially through me. I was like, wait, did I miscommunicate? And I think that that was a great example. So thanks for doing that. And I'm
awesome.
totally good now.
Okay,
Thanks.
good.
Yeah. So this I guess kind of ties into another question is kind of what is the biggest roadblock or point that you think people miss that keeps them stuck from growing and healing?
Honestly, I think it's that body piece.
Hmm.
I think that we're trying to tackle emotional issues from an intellectual place, but emotions actually sit in our bodies. They show up in our bodies, they live in our bodies. They are our brains intellectually make sense of those bodily experiences. We give them names, we try to understand, what we're needing to make these yucky feelings go away, but we're not actually listening to the body and there's so much information there. And I think that's
Hmm.
really where the field is heading is into the more of the somatic work to kind of that might put that mind body connection back together.
That's something I've definitely learned in my life. I'm a very let me learn logically, and then I'm like, why is this not working? I'm like, oh, the connecting to your body. So that's been really impactful for my life. Still on the journey with it.
I don't get anywhere with the couple until I start getting them into their body,
Hmm.
nowhere. So,
Yeah, that's I don't know if I would say that's validating for me to be like, oh yeah, okay, that I'm not just the only one. That's like a very important piece.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is absolutely.
Do you have a tip for anybody who maybe is new to understanding this concept of like, how do I start that?
Yeah. So, the first thing is just to really recognize, when anytime that you sort of have a sense that something isn't right, right? Or you find yourself behaving in a way in a relationship that isn't really who you want to be in the world. That is where you really need to kind of sit with yourself and go, okay, what happened in my body right before I snapped? Or
Mhm.
what's going on in my body right now? Right. And kind of find, so usually what you're going to find in a trigger, we're talking about triggers here, right?
Mhm.
Anything that kind of happens that you want to, it's a message you get from your partner, something that they say or do, if we just want to keep it in a relationship context, that causes you to react. And that could be shut down or snap or whatever. Something is going to happen in your body. Those with avoidant attachment have a really, really hard time finding that. Really hard time. A lot of times, the only way that I can help them find it is to take them to a place where I kind of help them paint a picture of a relaxing moment, a moment where they felt successful at work or
Mhm.
to their partner. And I can kind of get them into the fact that their body is relaxed, there's no tension. And then I say something, okay, now imagine when your partner's mad at you and they're protesting and they're telling you everything you do wrong, and then they'll feel it because of the contrast. So
Mhm.
it's really finding that kind of first surge of tension and then really sitting with it, lingering with it. We're used to just wanting to run away from that tension, like do anything to make it go away, but we're missing it, right? And so we need to just
Mhm.
kind of sit with it and go, okay. And what I might say to the client is, all right, now you feel that. Let's kind of close your eyes and just linger there. Let's just linger with that tension. Tell me more about it. Well, it's in my chest. Okay. What do you think that tension is? Is it kind of like a fear? And usually it is. And they'll say, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So what's it afraid of? Like, what's the fear? If your partner really is telling you you shouldn't feel sad over this situation, like what's going to happen? What's so bad about that? Well, if they're
Mhm.
telling me I feel sad, I'm alone, not to feel sad, then I'm just sitting here alone with my emotions. Okay, well, that's really hard. What's
Mhm.
the impact of that? What would your life be like if you always kind of had to walk around feeling alone with your emotions and had no support for that? Or they didn't change what they were doing to kind of help you not have to go to that sad place. And then people are typically going to get down into some vulnerability under that fear is going to be a lot of pain. The fear
Mhm.
is of the pain, right? I don't want to walk around feeling unsupported. I don't want to walk around in a relationship where my partner is kind of chronically doing these things to let me down. And then I have to end up feeling dropped all the time. That's a terrible place to
Mhm.
be. And so now we're really deepening that experience. And now we're getting to a place where we can say, hey, what happens is that this is where my body goes. When you're kind of I'm getting these messages that I can't really trust you to do what you say and say what you do enough of the time. Like it leaves me feeling really alone and kind of dropped. And that's a bad place for me. I mean, I need to do work with the other partner, to kind of be able to hold that, right? It's not just
Mhm.
one-sided. But that's a very, very different way to communicate with someone than you're just like your dad. You never show up. You're just, you're impinging upon my boundaries. My boundaries are that follow through with your word. I mean, this is a very, very different type of communication. And so
Mhm.
when I'm just going through this process with this first partner to just really help them tap in and figure out at the bottom of the barrel what is missing here and what are you really needing here, the other partner is empathizing. They're having
Mhm.
an experience, just witnessing that. They're starting to really, I want to show up for my partner. I'm seeing this like sad, vulnerable place, and they're kind of learning about their own stuff in the process because we all know what that place is like. I mean, we all have that place in us, right? And so it's
Mhm.
just kind of it's creating this really connecting experience. And like does that kind of conversation solve all partners' problems? No, no, definitely. We're still going to have disagreements, but it most certainly helps create an emotional bond that makes it
Mhm.
much easier for them to communicate about their problems in a healthy way. And
Mhm.
sometimes those problems are just stand ins for the lack of emotional needs being met to begin with, right?
Mhm.
Problems, arguments they have around money, a lot of times aren't about money at all, but do my needs actually matter to you? And so it's just kind of like this foundational work that all the other good stuff starts to flow from. Now, at the end of the day, could some partners just be incompatible? Yeah, sure. They might be, right? Most of the time, I think they aren't. They are actually more compatible than they realize because they came together to begin with. But we can never know without first cleaning up the communication and building up that bond.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great example. You touched on sharing a little bit about avoidant attachment. Could you kind of briefly, just for people who don't know what attachment type style is, kind of go through a brief overview of those?
Yeah, sure. So, the basis of attachment theory is that we need humans, we need each other, we need a tribe to feel safe and secure. We're social animals. We can't survive the wild alone, so we need each other. And if we need each other, that means that the other side of that coin is that we have to fear not having our connections be safe because You can't have a need without a fear of the need being unmet. And so everybody has these relationship fears, typically around abandonment or, being seen as kind of weak or incompetent, which is going to ultimately lead to abandonment, all of which lead to death. It's kind of very primally speaking, it's a death fear at the end of the day. So we're supposed to have these fears, and then depending on the way we manage the fears kind of will define our attachment style. So if you have an anxious attachment, first of all, you're going to be more prone to fears to begin with because you have had fearful experiences around relationships. You have felt emotionally abandoned. You have felt physically abandoned. Your brain has been wired to believe this is a possibility. I need to prevent that from happening because that's a very vulnerable, unsafe place to be. So you're going to already kind of have a lot of anxious feelings around relationships to begin with. I can be dropped at any moment. And so the way that that person goes about managing those fears is like close the distance, make sure everything's okay, seek reassurance, be on alert for any kind of sign that something isn't going wrong. And if I do see something is going wrong, protest, get them to hear me, get them to change. It's kind of like a kind of forceful, way of being. And in the process, what happens is first of all, they tend to gravitate toward people who aren't available because they don't know what that even feels like, right? They're used to their familiarity is unavailability. So they keep kind of repeating the same narrative because that's what's familiar to them. And then on top of that, the way that they try to seek reconnection with these people who tend to not be available to begin with pushes them further away, right? They kind of get in their own way. And so then we have someone with an avoidant attachment. What they learn to do subconsciously is just cut off their need. They don't really cut it off, but they shove it away out of awareness. It's still there, but they just learn to like be very independent or rely on, achieving or intellectualizing their way through life or fixing problems. And so their relationship needs, they can seem like they're lower. They're not really lower, but they can seem like they're lower. And they're really kind of out of tune with, their inner experiences. And so what happens is that, when they have relationship stress, their tendency is just move away from it. Move away, shut it out. That could look like just trying to fix the problem so the tension goes away. Let's just get that away, or let's just avoid it altogether. Someone with a disorganized attachment is just kind of chaotic, unpredictable, a little bit of everything. What the way one person's disorganized attachment shows up can be very different from the way another person's disorganized attachment shows up. And that person's disorganized attachment might show up different on Wednesday than it does on Monday. So it's just very unpredictable. That's why it's called disorganized. Someone with a secure attachment, yeah, they experience relationship fears. I mean, we all do, right? But they're not overwhelmed with fear. Their fears tend to be more related to the actual present situation instead of all these projections of the past, their experiences from the past, because they have had either they've grown and learned how to have a secure attachment from doing work, or they have just had, relationship ease in their life and they have no reason to have crazy fears. But then when they do have ruptures, because we all do, they just have this kind of emotionally balanced way of going about repairing without kind of launching in like the anxious partner with all this energy and intensity and blame and you this and you that, or without just avoiding the problem altogether. They're like, yeah, this needs to be addressed. Something in my body isn't right. There's a problem here. This needs to be addressed. But I also need to recognize that I need to address the problem in a way that isn't, pushing this person away or leaving them with unmet attachment needs.
Yeah, that's a great description. And I like how you said with the secure attachment that they still have some fears, like we're human, but it's in the way that they address it and learn to do that more securely. So they don't have to, secure attachment isn't perfect, but it's really working on that.
Yeah. And they're flexible, so they can mess up and say things in the wrong way and go back and go, okay, I shouldn't, let me rephrase that. Or it's a much more flowy, flexible way of being. It's definitely not perfect.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I had one other question of if you could pick a few things that you've known from all of your knowledge that you've learned, life experience, what do you wish that people knew?
Yeah, so I mean, this answer has changed kind of throughout the years because I keep, you know, shifting and growing as a person and a professional. But I think this right now, I'm really kind of recognizing that one of the biggest things that gets in couples and partners' ways is going back and forth between each other's experiences and feelings. Like they get triggered and they just bounce back and forth between the triggers. Well, you're not showing up for me. I feel disappointed. I feel like, well, 3 weeks ago I was disappointed. What about when you're a disappointment too? And now the mic has gone to that partner. Now we're talking about that partner's trigger. And then now and they just keep going back and forth. And when I'm working with a couple, both partners are going to have very different, sometimes of the same event, different experiences, different recollections. And I have to, both of them deserve to be understood and have their emotional experience of that event be held and understood and processed, right? But to do that, I have to work with them one at a time. Because if we're just going back and forth, I'm going to get lost. We're never really going to be able to address anything. And so that really is what couples aren't doing at home is they aren't taking that space with each other. And it's hard because it means you really do have to be emotionally mature enough to put your trigger over here and really tend to what your partner's giving you and really close that up. And then later, come and say, okay, now we need to kind of address my feelings around this. And so I think if partners could just do nothing else but that, they'd
Mhm.
probably be in a lot better place.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good. That is difficult to do at times. I know that I've been like, well, what about, can you do mine first? Can you listen to my feelings first? So taking turns in that. Yeah.
I know, and I think that's where you have to really get into that mindset of, "Hey, we gotta work as a team here, right? We
Mhm.
gotta really work as a team, and we're not gonna get anywhere if we're playing, whose needs matter most," is what I call it, so
Mhm.
it is
That's
hard. It's
awesome.
probably one of the hardest things that to do in, as humans, I think.
So, do you feel like this work has affected you as a mom and your relationship?
Yeah, I feel like it's more profoundly impacted my experience as a mom more than anything. I don't really know why that is. I don't know if it's because I don't know, like, it definitely has improved my marriage, but I think I just really went into this needing more help as a mom than anything,
Mhm.
and, I mean, I it is profound how, um, healing it is, not just for my relationship with my kids, but for their ability to navigate the world, and, I mean, they're doing so well, emotionally, they're so ahead of the game
Mhm.
because I learned how to really be there for them emotionally. I mean, it's really profound, the quality of my relationship with them and the fact that they can come to me, I'm their go-to, right?
Mhm.
For emotional support. And I don't know, like, I just, just saying that gives me chills because that's exactly I went into this. I mean, I when I had my son, I was not doing well. I did not know how to be emotionally supportive at all. I mean, not even very little. I just was reading every book out there imaginable to help me with parenting. So to really realize that I have not, I just have achieved that is everything to me. So
That's awesome. That's really
yeah,
cool.
thank you. And
Do
my
you
kids
have
aren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, there's things like in order to really laser focus in on their emotional health, it does mean that I've had to be a little more lax in other areas. Like I don't pressure them with school. I put my focus into emotional support. I mean, it's not hurting them. They're all doing really well in school. But so we're not perfect. We're
Mhm.
not a perfect family by any stretch of the imagination, but I've got that part down. So
Yeah, that part was something that you noticed you didn't know how to do and you've learned and seen the benefits of that.
exactly.
Do you have like a tip for moms who maybe were where you were when you had your son, who are like, well, how do I start? Or even like an example that you've had with your kids where you spoke to them in a way that was emotionally supportive?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think there are a couple of resources that have really stood out to me more than any other resources out there. A year ago, I would have said Dr. Becky Goodinside is my go-to. Love that book. I think it's fantastic. But since then, I've discovered something else that I think is even takes it to a new level, which is Gabor Mate. He wrote a book on ADD called A Scattered Mind or Scattered Minds, one or the other.
Hmm.
And there's part 6 is a part about parenting and how parenting and attachment issues can contribute to ADD. And it is, forget about if you have ADD or not, or if your kid has ADD or not, it's totally irrelevant. That section in that book is parenting gold. It is, I mean, it reflects the way that I really believe in being, the way I aspire to be. Even before I read it, that's kind of where I was. But the way he puts that into words. So if you really want to follow along with this philosophy, I don't think there's anything better than that piece of that book. But the podcast I just did, I gave this example. My daughter came in this morning. She's 13, and we've been watching Gilmore Girls at night. That's our thing right now. And so she came in. I was getting ready in my bathroom, and she said, "Oh, I found out Harper can't go swimming today." And something about the way she said it reminded me of, I don't know if you've watched Gilmore Girls,
Hmm.
but the
Yeah.
grandma on Gilmore Girls. I just all of a sudden, like, I channeled the grandma and I said, Laura Lee. And like just basically just made a joke, right? By imitating the grandma on Gilmore Girls. None of this makes sense, but just let's just narrow it down to I made a joke.
Yeah.
And she just kind of slinked away, right? She didn't really laugh. She just was like, whatever, and slinked away. And then it like hit me. I was like, oh my God, I just dropped her emotionally. It was just a little thing, not the biggest deal in the world, not going to end. But I was like, I didn't tend to her. I didn't like meet her. She really brought this thing to me about her friend. I kind of flippantly just went into my jokey mind and really like that meant something to her. And so I called her back in and I said, hey, I am so sorry. I go, did I just drop you? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I go, I was just trying to be funny. And you're right. Like you really are, bothered, but it really does upset you that you can't go swimming with Harper. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm sorry. It just little tiny things like that where, it could have just been ignored and, again, not the end of the world, or she could have kind of snapped back and said, you never listen to me. And then I defend myself and it went into kind of a silly cycle or whatever. Or she could have felt dropped. And then later she's not able to show up to someone else emotionally because she felt dropped herself. So it's
Hmm.
little tiny things like that that don't have to be around these big events. But what did I communicate to her? I communicated to her, I saw you, I care about you. I wanted to repair with you. You matter to me. Your feelings matter to me. Like just that repair work was just so healing. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Hmm. That's a great example. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and I have seen Gilmore Girls, so I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I feel like that show, like to me, that was like a young people show, like 20 years ago. Now I watch it, I'm like, this is so dated, but I was like a full on adult when this came out. Like
Yeah.
I'm getting too old.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for answering some questions about attachment style and just your life and the different experiences. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
Thanks for joining us today for our conversation with Julie. Make sure you check her out. The links are below to her book, Secure Love, to her Instagram, The Secure Relationship. Again, lots of resources on there. Thank you guys for taking time to listen in on Simply Complicated, and we look forward to seeing you next time.